Hello, this is the Werewolf channel. My name is Louis, I'm the moderator. If you subscribe to the channel and like and comment and all those things, you are in with a chance to win a PlayStation 5. I'm going to take another draw on February the 16th. We already gave one away to Jeff Daniels in October, who seemed to be very happy with it. So please like and subscribe, and you could win a PlayStation 5. Now, let's carry on with stories of Will, our real werewolf. Hello, this is the Werewolf channel, and I am Will the Werewolf. I am, as you know, telling the stories of my life. This is part 5 of me picking up a hitchhiker as I travel from the north of Scotland to, well, now I'm going to Manchester. But if you want to check out part 1, 2, 3 and 4, there should be a little thing in the corner of the video. I don't know how it works, but you can click on that, which takes you to episode number 1, and then that will make a bit more sense as it goes on. I'm just going to carry on with the story now. We're currently at the House of Brewer. I've just taken my little hitchhiker shopping. A werewolf shopping isn't a normal story, I know, but everybody's got to do it. We also poo, Anyway, let's carry on with the story. We now, all 3 of us, sat at a table, Sally and I with our meals, and ate. We were talking as we ate, me and Sally that is. Fen was just sat there in a bit of a huff, about inconsequential and pointless things. It's really not like me to talk about inconsequential and pointless things. Do you know what? Excuse me, she was so easy to talk to. Things just flowed between us. There's like no difficulty in conversation, none of those, like strained, difficult silences. We just talked shite all through the meal. At this point, I didn't really want to kill her or hurt her. I was just more interested in looking after her in a way. My posit was sat bemused, watching and listening to what was going on in front of him. His head was going left to her, then right to me in conversation such as, like a spectator at a tennis game or something. As we both chewed, Sally and I, that is. He couldn't, because he's an invisible werewolf, so he can't eat food, which kind of pisses him off. That's why he likes me. Anyway, Fen's voice came into my head at this moment of silence. Okay, Will, I have to admit it, she's pretty great. It was such a nice thing to hear. Now that she was dressed as a lady of the Highlands, she had an element of regality to her. I mean, she looked like she was born of Scottish royal blood, and she exuded a strength and beauty, and all around us the people were pretty much enamoured by her. The meal had lasted for a very long length of time, yet had seemed quite quick in my head, and we were now both happy and full of food, and I even left a large tip for our server, which is unlike me. We then made our way back through the snow, which was now much deeper, to the car. It was about 4 p.m. and dark, and getting darker. She sat back in her seat and closed her eyes and yawned, and I smiled and dragged my jacket from the car's back seat and laid it over her lap, lifting it to her chin and tucked it in around her neck. She moaned a little gasp of delight and wiggled her way deeper into the leather seat. Although they looked closed, I noticed her eyes were actually slightly cracked, and she was sneakily observing my actions as she lay there. A smile came to her lips. I like it when you look after me in this way, Fen. I feel that you really care for me. Do you? She asked. I laughed and smiled, and then my face was a brief mask of confusion and worry. Yeah, I think that I do, Sally. At this point, my posit just let out a deeper sigh and sunk back onto the rear seat of the car, mentally mumbling profanity after profanity. I think, Sally, that we should really find somewhere to stay tonight and get on with the journey tomorrow. At this, she lifted her head and looked into me deeply with those emerald green orbs, those bright, intelligent eyes questioning my reasoning for this. I could see the various ideas for my wanting to stop run through her mind. It felt like a very long time that she stared into my, black soul, and I knew that her final decision would actually have a big impact on how I felt. This was a weird sensation. I cared what this being actually thought of me. Eventually, she just simply nodded and gave me her agreement. "Okay." Then she snuggled into the seat once more while I checked to find a local hotel that I could consider. Luckily, there was a hotel very close, the Old Manse of Blair. It had 5 stars and seemed, a semi-decent place. I programmed the GPS and we set off once more. We parked the car at the hotel's grounds and gathered our clothes to take inside. We ran through the snow to get to the reception and burst in through the double doors, laughing and completely out of breath. The reception, on the other hand, was silent, except for the ticking of a clock, the crackle of a log on the fire, a small dog washing his balls, and the ferocious stare from behind the reception. The receptionist's stare was looking at us, and it already had 100 questions in its eyes. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" Her tone was already degrading and patronising. I did not know if I wanted to rip her apart or lick her face. I looked at her name badge. Yes, you've probably guessed it. Another fucking Karen. Sally stepped in, speaking with an authority that I'd really never seen before. "Can I get your best room or suite that you have left for tonight, my good woman?" After a long pause and a strained, maintained smile, Karen took her eyes from Sally's and landed them on mine. She smiled at me with a little exasperation. Her lips parted and her tongue touched the boundary of her mouth, and then she turned to her computer. She tapped a few keys a little too percussively and smiled. "We have the panic suite available, sir, for you and your, I assume, daughter," she said, and looked up at me again, meeting my eyes and smiling. She was doing this on purpose, and she thought pausing would make me uneasy when all it did was really piss me off. I smiled, and Fen and I started to walk forward. I was going to change, grab this woman by the throat and drag her over the desk. I was going to rip her throat out and then massacre the entire fucking hotel, then settle down for the night in amongst the blood and gore to rest. It was happening. The wolf was coming. Sally must have read my intentions or something, and as I walked forward, she reached and grabbed my wrist. Instinctively, I turned to bat her away, but when I looked into her eyes, I saw a wonderful mischievousness that I knew meant that she was actually going to deal with this woman. She smiled at me, and she walked forward. She tossed her bag very hard, and it hit the reception desk at its base. She then walked up to it and placed her hands demurely on the top of it. It was great. She had leaned over the desk on her tiptoes, and her pretty little ass in a tight little was projected in my direction. "Hi, Karen. This is my, let's say father. Yes, let's say father," she giggled and winked at me. "I'm afraid he speaks no English." She turned towards me and motioned me towards her with a hand. I stepped forward and grabbed Sally on the shoulder and squeezed it firmly. We will need your best rooms, Karen. I hope it's okay to call you Karen. So, are there any rooms available for us, Karen? We could really do with one now." She had somehow removed my wallet from my pocket and had taken the magic black card from its interior and placed it on the desk. It instantly did its magic with Karen. I now smiled and checked my empty back pocket. She'd definitely stolen it, the little bitch. Karen took a while to gather herself, but she amazingly did recover her swagger. It was impressive to see it done so quickly and so well. She smiled at Sally and grabbed a key card from behind the desk, opening a hand towards Sally. "Well, here you are. Breakfast is from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. We also make a room service breakfast if you feel it would be more suitable for your requirements. Thanks, Karen. That's very good information to know. I think we will make it to the breakfast bar, though. If I can walk, that is, after tonight. She smiled and whispered behind her hand, thinking that only Karen and her could hear. She then grabbed my hand to drag me after her, giggling, wiggling little body. I looked back at Karen and laughed. Dobroj noche, I waved. Halfway down the hall, I patted my pockets and realised I'd left something at the desk, so I went back to reception. Sorry, can I get my card back, please? Karen, now sat at the desk in her little chair, looked up over the half-moon glasses on the end of her nose with her mouth open and slowly passed me the car. Spasibo? I could hear little Sally laughing, British colloquialism here, her tits off, and she was out of control by the time that I got back to her. She was actually sat on the floor waiting for me. I might wee, she managed to share through her hilarity. Funny, huh? I asked her as I lifted her to her feet and pulled her along behind me like the suitcase that was in the other hand. It's lucky. If I'd cared what Karen thought, then it would have been very humiliating. Once we were in the bedroom, her mood changed instantly. She became quite forlorn. She sat on the edge of the bed, swinging her new boots, and enjoyed the mint that had been on the pillow. She just sat there and stared at me while I moved around the room, organising our respective lives for the night. I was enjoying it, though. Do you like me, Fen? She asked, masticating her minty chocolate mouthful. What? I asked her, having half heard what she said. I said, do you like me? She repeated. Yeah, I suppose I do, I said, opening my bag to retrieve my phone charger and beard trimmer. She had finished her mints and looked at the other one sat on its little comfy pillow bed. You do? She asked as she flopped onto her back and reached for the other treat on the pillow. Yes, Sally, I like you, I reassured her and passed her an apple from the bowl on the table. Eat this and not that shite, please. I smiled as I took the mint and secreted it in my pocket. Humph! She gasped as she inspected the unwanted piece of fruit. But how much? She asked as she bit deep into the fruit and spoke with a mouthful. You have no idea who I am, so why do you like me? I stopped everything and stared at the ceiling for some time as I played with a toothpaste tube in my hand. Well, I like you because you make me smile, laugh and feel good. Do you? Do you know... She paused. I waited for her to complete her question, but she did not. She just continued eating her apple while maintaining eye contact with me. Do I what? I asked her. She kept me waiting while she chewed a large, lumpy mouthful. Eventually she stopped and swallowed down the contents in her mouth. She still stared, but had lost the confidence to ask the next question, which, to be honest, was probably better for me than her. I put on the kettle and started rummaging through the contents of my bag. So, Sally, can I hear your story? I mean, your true story. Boredom does not normally lead to someone leaving home. She sat up silently and started swinging her boots once more, looking at the floor. The discomfort that she was now dealing with was huge and difficult for her, and then she proceeded to just tell me everything, and it was truly a very sad story. She'd been abused by her father from a very young age and was telling me about Dad lying on her as a young child, maybe even a baby. She told me intimate details of how she'd been touched. She told me how her mother had known about it all along and not done anything about it. It was sickening to hear that this man had done these things to this young girl, stealing her of her innocence at such a young age. She was extremely graphic in the description. By the end of it, I sat next to what was now a crying child, holding her in my arms as she broke and let the world's woes pour out of her damaged little soul. The child was a soldier, and something that I could see as a fighter. As she'd gotten older, she'd started to fight her father's efforts, although she would keep the man's activities secret for the sake of her mother and her other siblings. I struggled to know how that mother had been able to ignore what was going on under her own nose. Did she think it was an acceptable thing for her to do? I respected this little creature and was feeling almost feeling an intense sorrow for her. Fen at this point was adequately pissed off with the situation, wondering what the fuck was going on. I held her as she cried, allowing the tears to stain my shirt, allowing this thing to empty itself of all its woes. Eventually, she was exhausted, and she could not continue with the breakdown that she had suffered. I lifted her and put her in the big bed and tucked her in and kissed her on the forehead and wished her sweet dreams. "I would like to do something special for you, Will," she said, patting the bed. I shook my head. "Nah, Sally, you've done a lot for me today. You're fun to be around, and what you've just shared with me has been enough. I don't want anything more, although it's much appreciated." Inside, I was in turmoil. I could do something about this. I wanted to go back and meet these humans face to face and engage with them in a manner they understood. She slept soundly that night while I couldn't. I sat racking my brains and rocking back and forth as I stared at the four walls while thinking my next move. My posit spent his time telling me that it was only a human and why should I give a fuck what happens to it? But I did. The following day she woke while I sat staring at the walls. She was beautiful, but not in the way I usually like things. It was not attractive in the forms I knew, like the eroticism. I don't know, it was weird. It was a different attraction. I wanted to care for it and look after it, and it was strange to me. She got dressed and we went to breakfast where I introduced Sally to the taste sensation that are croissants and jam. She had never had these experiences before, and she enjoyed them massively and over-enthusiastically and in somewhat of an annoying manner. But I loved it. Every time she murmured her approval, I laughed and smiled, and she relished my own enthusiasm as I appreciated hers. Sally, I said. She saw the serious expression on my face and stopped chewing the fifth croissant, mouth open. She said. "I'm going to take you back to your parents. I want to meet them and speak to them and maybe kill them," I told her sincerely. She sat looking at me, looking into me and assessing her next move. I could sense the confusion in her body. She tried to work out what to do and what to say. She quickly chewed up the remaining food in her mouth and swallowed it down with a gulp. "You want to kill my parents?" she asked. "I think so. I need to talk to them at least, Sally. I am something that can really help you. I am something that can kill them quite happily if I wish." "I know," she said. This shocked me and my posit. The posit sitting next to the dish of bacon quickly turned towards her. "You know what?" I asked. "I know," she repeated. "You know what exactly?" I asked. "That you're not joking when you told me you're a werewolf." "Shh, what?" She just continued calmly popping more croissants in her mouth and smiling. How?" I needed to know. "Well, I woke up at about 2 a.m. and there you were, a big hairy beast asleep on the couch. So I covered you with a blankie, and I thought that I might mention it this morning if you did not." I kept her eye contact for a long time, then looked over at the posit. "We must sleep transform," he said with a wolfy shrug. I smiled in response. "Okay," I said. "Does that not worry you a little bit?" I asked her. "Well, you've not tried to eat me yet, so do I need to worry about you being a werewolf?" she replied. I smirked in response. "Who'd want to eat you? You're revolting." We both laughed and got back to eating. "So, would you?" she smiled. "Would I what?" "Would you kill them for me?" I continued eating, looking very seriously at her. She did the same, our eye contact never faltering. "Okay, yes, I answered, exasperated. Yay! She shouted, leaping up and running to my side of the table, where she jumped onto my lap and kissed my forehead, making everyone at breakfast stare. I smiled. This was so embarrassing, but so cool. After breakfast, we went back to the suite and goofed around until checkout time. We paid Karen, who was still there, and set off on a beautiful snowy day on a new mission to go and kill some parents. Such happy times. And that was part 5 of the Hitchhiker journey. So I'm going to continue with part 6 next week. Hope you enjoyed the little story. Please subscribe and like and comment if you want. That would be very nice. And I'm sending you all my love. Bye.